thing that I've noticed over the years. So I've been working with restoration business owners since '09 as a consultant.
Right.
When they get a handle on, when they let me help them get their financials in order and they can truly use them and look at them and know that they're telling the truth about the business, just that act of paying attention makes them more profitable.
Sure.
Yeah.
Focus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this industry is too hard to be unprofitable or to be breaking even at, I mean, it's not uncommon for me to see five, six, $7 million businesses breaking even, barely breaking even.
Sure.
Sometimes they're mitigation only, right? There's just no reason for that. When you're a small business owner, you have no boss for the first time in your life, right? That's why I hired a business coach because I thought this is
Wow.
like, I feel like a little bit strange that nobody knows what I'm doing or not doing.
You feel a little lost?
Yeah, I did. I didn't like, I don't know, I didn't like the lack of accountability. I'm a very structured and disciplined person by nature,
Mhm.
and I
Mhm.
still have since 2006, I've almost never been without some type of coaching engagement for
Sure.
myself.
Sure.
When every once in a while I think, ah, no, I'm good. I really don't need that anymore. And I get less stuff done. I don't push myself. I don't have anybody challenging me. I don't have
Mhm.
anybody saying, hey, Scott, did you do what you said you were going to do last time we met? Right. And so when I
Holding you
don't have
accountable.
that, it's very easy to let yourself off the hook. Right.
Sure.
So a lot of my clients over the years have said, hey, one of the best things about us working together is that I know you're gonna ask me what I'm gonna do, when I'm gonna do it, and then you're gonna ask me if I actually did it, and I get more done. So now in the Restoration Profit Academy, these guys, in some cases, women also have a little peer group where I'm asking them, what's your no matter what between now and the next time we meet?
Hmm.
What's your no matter? What are you going to get done? What's really important to you? When they say it out loud and I take a note of it, they're more likely. It's not 100%, but they're much more likely to make
Sure.
progress in that area.
Most restoration owners are great at the work, but stuck without a clear playbook for growth. Restoration Insider exists to change that. This podcast is hosted by Scott Sandell, the Chief Revenue Officer at Karma Staff. And today's guest is Scott Miller. Scott is the founder of Growth League and one of the most reputable restoration coaches in our space. Scott actually started his journey by accident after winning Rookie of the Year as a first year franchise owner. Many other restoration owners started calling him for help. And since then, he's helped startups to multi office 8-figure companies. And his focus is on the thing that keeps the restoration owners up most, which is sales and profitability. Today, Scott get into it.
Thanks, Wang.
All right. Scott, great to have you on here. I am very excited about going through this with you and learning a lot today. So, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me, Scott.
You got it. So, we're going to get into some exciting stuff here, but before we jump into that, can you just tell us a little bit about what you've been focused on with restoration owners lately? And do you have an example, a real example of some success that you've recently experienced?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things, so I always say that this is a really tough industry, right? How long have you been in the industry? Or
26 years.
26 years. So you got so I started in '05, so 21. So you got a couple on me.
It's a long time.
Right? And anybody watching this, I'm sure is shaking their head. It's a tough industry. So I really want to help my clients to be as profitable as they can be, to reduce the chaos as much as possible, and also to help them build sellable businesses because probably like I'll use myself as an example. A big part of my retirement plan working hinged on me selling my business. And I needed to do everything I could do to turn it into a business that was going to be attractive to people and I could
Right.
get what I thought I needed to or wanted to get for the business. And so a lot of times the clients that I work with, they're putting everything on the line, just like I did when I started, right? Like I started with less than nothing. I financed my business with two credit card convenience checks.
Mm.
So,
Wow.
and my wife was a stay-at-home mom, pregnant with our third child. I had no other option, other than to succeed. And so I've got a real soft spot because most of my clients, there's few exceptions, but most of them are like they don't have a lot of extra money. Like they don't have the kind of money that it would just be okay if my restoration business failed, right? So I take it very seriously and um, that they put their trust in me to help them with these things.
Exactly.
So that's what I love doing. In terms of successes, there's so many different ways we could go with this. One of the things is when I start working with a new client, I want to make sure that their bookkeeping discipline is really tight.
Mm,
And that their chart of accounts is set up in a way that they can use it as a tool to really understand their business and improve their business. And a lot of people will not look at their P&Ls on a regular basis because they know it's not telling them the real truth about the business. And so early on, that's what I want to fix. And when we do that, like, I'm thinking of a couple of different recent clients, like for say in the past 12 months, that they start to get more profitable just because like there's lots of levers, right, that we can pull
correct.
in a business to get more profitable. But the one is, and it almost seems like too good to be true, but when you pay attention to something, it usually gets better, right? Like if you're counting calories, you're probably going like when you start paying attention to what you put into your body,
Sure.
you probably do better from
Absolutely.
a health,
Focus.
right? You're really focused on it. So now when an owner has financials that are real and they're not doing all these mental gymnastics like, well, yeah, it looked like we were really profitable last month, but we weren't because we took a bunch of deposit money, and so we've got to back that out. And they're having all these internal conversations about why the P&Ls aren't telling the truth. And then because of that, you do that often enough, you just stop paying attention to them altogether. 'Cause you say, like,
Correct.
why bother? They're not telling me the truth about the business. So I would say the I can think of a couple clients recently that now that their financials are in really good shape and they're job costing and they're having feedback meetings with their team members on the financial performance of jobs. Like things are getting better just because of that, just because they're paying attention, just because they've got really good information all of a sudden.
Good. So for and that's great information. And I totally understand for from years of working with these owners.
Yeah.
But for the owners out there who might be listening to this and they feel like they're working really hard but not gaining ground, what
Hmm.
is usually the first thing that needs to change? You mentioned obviously good bookkeeping and the P&L. Outside of that, what have you found?
So are, is the scenario the owner is really involved in daily operations, going out on jobs? Is that kind of what you're thinking of?
Well, a lot of times that's what we've seen. I think you've seen that as well,
Yeah.
right? They're working in the business rather than on the business, right? We've all said that a million
Sure.
times, but helping them understand what that means. And so really thinking from that perspective, where's a great place for them to start?
Yeah. So one of the things that I do with clients is help them. I'm sure, as a support person yourself for years, you've heard people say like, geez, I was so busy, but I don't really know what I did today,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
You're running all over the place. So again, back to like the counting calorie analogy, I get them to do a time study, which sounds, I hear myself saying it and I cringe because it sounds horrible. Uh, and it might be a little bit like
A little painful.
a little bit painful, but the
Okay.
payoff is tremendous. And so when I'll back up a little bit. When I started my business in '05, 6 months later, I hired a business coach. So, and then a year into it, I'm rookie of the year. And as Wang George said, I started getting a lot of calls from people asking for help. And I really enjoyed helping them. So the focus with my business coach was how can I create more time? How can I free up my time so I'm not so involved in the daily operations because I really want to help my peers in any way I can. But I need to, like, I can't be in the office until 8, 9, 10 o'clock. Like, I need to start freeing myself up.
Right.
So that's when I got really serious about documenting what I was doing. So it started with a time study. How am I spending my time? And then just chipping away at it. Um, Creating process documents, which is now so much easier than ever before between AI and screencast videos and so many
Right.
great ways to do that, to train process to other people. So I started just documenting everything that I did. And in some cases, I had people on the team already that I could hand it off to. In other cases, I didn't yet. But I wanted to be prepared. I wanted to be doing the work to get ready for the day when, for example, when I hired my first sales rep, I wanted to be prepared for that day. So I started to document everything that I did, everything I expected of myself. The frequency that I did it, a lot of like scripting and how I documented everything in my CRM and what I did with that and how I did follow-ups so that when it was time to hire the person, I already had the playbook for them.
Great.
So I just methodically each week would, task myself with creating process and delegating and 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 kind of transforming myself into more of a checker. So instead of doing, I would check because I didn't want to just say, okay, Scott, you're my sales guy now. Here you go. Here's a playbook. Just go do it, and and just hope that everything was going to go well, right?
Sure.
I think a lot
Hope.
of times, and I was guilty of this myself in the beginning. Like when I hired my first mitigation manager, I was so happy to be done with it. I was just like, here you
Right.
go. It's yours now.
Right.
And that wasn't a great approach.
Mm-mm.
Because
No.
things started to not go well and I had to get re-engaged. And so I think it's really important to continue to check to make sure things are being done at the frequency you need them to be done, at the quality level you need them to be done. So long-winded answer, but if I'm working with an owner that says I am ready, I really want to get intentional about getting off the truck or getting out of daily operations much more because let's face it, it's really important when it comes time to sell the business. And
100%.
and I love working with folks that come to me and say, I here's what's a real challenge. You call a business broker and say, I'm ready to sell. Like, I want to sell tomorrow. And the business broker says, well, okay. And you have a number in your head, Scott, right? You say, like, I want 3 million for the business. And the broker says, I
Mm-mm.
don't even know that I could sell this business at all. Forget about your number, right?
Correct.
You're not ready. And you say, well, yeah, but I need to sell it within the next 6 months. Like that's a problem. What I really like is somebody that's thinking ahead and thinking like, I know my business isn't ready to sell right now because the numbers aren't explainable. Like we're really sloppy with the bookkeeping. We're kind of managing the business by the bank balance. I'm way too involved in the daily operations and my time horizon is 3 to 5 years or 5 to 7 years, like
Sure.
or even 2 to 3 years. That's great. So now we can start to get really intentional about fixing those things to make the business attractive to a buyer. Uh,
Oh, yes.
so that was a little bit of a rant and maybe a tangent. Did I answer
No,
the
listen,
question?
yeah, you absolutely addressed it and you touched on something that we're going to dive into a little later in the discussion on, preparing the business to sell and all those factors. But I want to get into some other things. I know
Yeah,
that you have two academies, the
yep,
Restoration Profit Academy for owners and then Restoration Sales Academy for the sales team. So
yep.
why don't you talk about those two academies a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So RSA or Restoration Sales Academy, I started that about it's probably going on 5 years now. And a lot of the owners that I was working with at the time, and still, like I feel like it's continuing to build. They're realizing that they need to get more diverse with where they're getting their work from. That they
Right.
don't want to just rely on one or two TPAs. They don't want to rely on just Google pay per click or a lead gen service that they're buying leads from. So they started hiring sales reps. My clients were hiring sales reps and then telling me it's not working out. Hire another one, not working out. Hire another
Right.
one, not working out. So I started to ask questions like, okay, Scott, tell me about how often are you meeting them? How are you training them? What type of role playing exercises are you going through with them? Are they are they logging activity notes in the CRM? Some would say yes, some would say no. For the ones
Yeah.
that would say yes, are you reviewing them? Are you giving them feedback? Do they know that you're looking at them?
Nope.
Everything was a no, I'm not doing any of that,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
I'm hiring somebody with sales experience, or even worse, no sales experience, but lots of industry experience, and take them on a couple of jobs and then just send them out in the field to make sales calls. Like,
Right.
okay, well, that's that's a big reason why it's not working. Now, could you hire somebody that on paper and in an interview seemed like the perfect candidate with lots of sales experience and they still don't work out, even if
Correct.
you are
Sure.
100%, right? Just like any other position in any company.
Hmm.
But if you do all the, use air quotes, right things according to Scott, I think you increase the odds of success much more.
Sure.
So I started coaching my clients' reps one-on-one. And uh, to be honest, it didn't really make sense financially. It was too expensive.
Sure.
So a couple of them said to me, "Hey, like would you ever consider doing a group program and maybe it could be less, monthly fee could be less?" And I was reluctant for a long time. People started asking me probably 2 years before I did it. And I was reluctant because I thought, man, it's just not going to be as good,
Hmm.
if I'm like, if I'm not one-on-one with them.
Right.
So I reluctantly started it with three clients. And within the first couple of calls, I remember thinking to myself, I was 100% wrong
Wow.
because the they weren't just learning from me, but they were hearing from their peers all over the country about what was working for them, and they were kind of getting energy from each other. And one of the elements of the call is I ask, what was your activity level this week? How many referrals did you get? And what is your win of the week? And
Good.
them sharing that was much different than me sharing wins of the week that I had 10 years ago, right? Or that my reps had 10
Well, it's
years
real.
ago. It was
It's real
real
for
and it
them.
was now.
Mm.
It was, last week. So if they were thinking to themselves, oh, there's no way I can get a referral from a State Farm agent because we're not on the program and they don't refer anyway, they send everybody a 800 number, but they hear somebody else on the call that says, hey, I got a fire from a State Farm agent. And I say, great, tell me about that, Scott. Are you guys on the vendor program? No. How
No.
many visits did it take you? Three. What were they doing before they, if you had never walked in there, what would they have done with that? They would have sent it to the 800 number. How did you convince them that it was a bad idea for their business and for their client to call the 800 number for so now they're hearing from their peers and like
Well,
such
that's
such a
valuable.
better experience. So I'm so glad that I listened. I'm thinking of a couple of clients' names that are popping in my head. I'm so glad that I did it, even though I didn't think it was going to be a great idea. It's really
Sure.
worked out well. So that's Restoration Sales Academy.
Okay.
And then the other one is the Restoration Profit Academy, and that is for owners. And so the it's another one that I've been doing that for about 2 years now. From time to time, I would have somebody would get on my calendar, book a call with me and talk about coaching and say, I really don't want one-on-one coaching. I really want um, some coaching, but I'm not in a franchise system, so I have no peer group. I don't know anybody.
Hmm.
Like I might go to an RIA convention or one of the TPA conventions, and I meet a couple of guys, but then I don't stay in touch with them. I'd really like to have a little bit of a peer network. So that's when I started the Restoration Profit Academy, and it's similar. Like a lot of my clients, my one-on-one clients, like that when you're a small business owner, you have no boss for the first time in your life, right? That's why I hired a business coach because I thought this is
Wow.
like, I feel like a little bit strange that nobody knows what I'm doing or not doing.
You feel a little lost?
Yeah, I did. I didn't like, I don't know. I didn't like the lack of accountability. I'm a very structured and disciplined person by nature,
Hmm.
but and I still have I since 2006, I've almost never been without some type of coaching engagement for
Sure.
myself.
Sure.
When every once in a while I think, ah, no, I'm good. I don't need that anymore. And I get less stuff done. I don't push myself. I don't have anybody challenging me. I don't have
Hmm.
anybody saying, hey, Scott, did you do what you said you were going to do last time we met? Right. And so when I
Holding you
don't have
accountable.
that, it's very easy to let yourself off the hook, right?
Sure.
So a lot of my clients over the years have said, hey, one of the best things about us working together is that I know you're gonna ask me what I'm gonna do, when I'm gonna do it, and then you're gonna ask me if I actually did it, and I get more done. So now in the in the Restoration Profit Academy, these guys, in some cases, women also have a little peer group where I'm asking them, what's your no matter what between now and the next time we meet?
Hmm.
What's your no matter? What are you going to get done? What's really important to you? And when they say it out loud and I take a note of it, they're more likely, it's not 100%, but they're much more likely to make
Sure.
progress in that area. So, and then it's kind of a hybrid because our calls are group calls, but they're also able to email me as much as they want in between calls. And if I
Hmm.
can't
Okay.
answer it in an email, my next go-to, and I've got a lot of supporting documents for just about anything a restoration person could want, aside from all of the actual work, right? The
Correct.
I don't do any training on how to suck water or clean soot. None of that.
Good.
So
No.
anything related to the business, I've got lots of resources. So, if you reach out to me and say, hey, uh, I've got a reconstruction manager, but I've heard you talk about performance-based compensation, and I really just kind of have this arbitrary subjective bonus that I give them once in a while when things are going well, and I want to move away to that from that. I want to have a real structured. I'll email you back uh,
Good.
a set of documents with videos to help you get started on that. You'll start working on that. You'll have questions. You'll email me again. I might shoot a screencast video just for you, giving you
Mhm.
feedback on some document of mine that you've tweaked for yourself, right? So there's a lot of one-on-one, even though it's a group program.
Right.
And then in some cases, it just doesn't make sense for an owner to be in a group program. Like I'm working with a client who is multi-generational, eight-figure, really large commercial construction business that's getting into mitigation.
Sure.
Didn't make sense for them to be in a group program. Sometimes startups, it also doesn't. Um, sometimes somebody last year I started to work with two different companies. Well, no, it's actually probably 2 years now, who they hadn't even started their restoration business. They looked at franchises and decided they didn't want to go the franchise route.
Right.
They talked to some consultants, chose me, and so I started working with them probably 3, 4 months before they actually did their first job. And
Okay.
um, so uh, for somebody like that, they probably don't fit the Restoration Profit Academy either. That group is more for like 1 to 3 million in revenue, give or
Sure.
take. There's some outliers in both directions.
Okay.
Um, but
Yeah, that's
yeah,
great. So are you seeing I would have based on this, I would think that there probably would be more of those from independent restoration companies versus
I think it's probably
franchise.
50
You get a
50,
mix.
Scott. Yeah,
Okay.
it's a pretty good
Fantastic.
mix. A lot of times the you've been you've been on the franchisor side,
Correct.
and I always say, God bless them. Like it's I can't imagine being a franchisor. I feel like nobody's happy. The 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 poor performers blame the franchisor that they're not
Mhm.
doing well and they want more. The top performers are sending in a whole lot of money and say, like, I just don't see the value. Right. So
Correct.
maybe have a small segment in the middle, right? Does that line up with your
It
experience?
is 100% on target. Yes.
So
Yes.
franchisees come to me because they say, I'm just not getting the support I need. Like I they did a great job of helping me, figure out how to do my first few water jobs and smoke jobs and but they're not doing, they're not teaching me job costing, and they're not helping me set up my chart of accounts. They're not helping me with the bookkeeping discipline. They've got process documents, but it doesn't really fit my business. There's all these different and and I don't that's not a dig on franchisors. I feel
Oh,
like
no,
when and
tough
I feel like
spot.
it is, and I feel like I was guilty of this in the beginning. In the very beginning, I resented having to pay money to a business coach because I thought, these guys should I'm paying them a lot of money. I shouldn't have to pay anymore.
Right,
But I don't know. I started to think like, no, that's not necessarily their role. Uh,
right.
so I do have a long-winded way of getting to it. I do have a nice mix of independents and franchisees, and
Sure.
I enjoy that. I like the mix.
No, that's
And
great, and yeah, I think you touched on something with the franchisors that are out there, and I think obviously there's a variety between all the franchisor networks that are out there, but I think some of them are doing a fantastic job trying to identify how can we structure that support, that training for all that are in our
yeah,
network because they could range from the very new that their first year they do 300 400,000 a year in revenue to the ones that are doing 20 plus million, right? how
right.
do you
How do you
how do you
sort them
add
out?
value to that group? And that's a big range, right? That's a large range.
Very difficult.
So
Yeah.
and I think they do a great job, but obviously, when the two networks that I was in, I saw some of the better owners reached out in addition to a coach such as yourself.
Yeah.
And I think I applaud them for doing that. And I
Mhm.
I never took it as, hey, franchisor, you're not doing your job.
Right.
I looked at it as, hey, we're seeking to do better
Mhm.
because we understand your time is spread out, right? If
Yeah.
when I was a franchise business consultant, I had a lot of owners that I was working with. You could only dedicate so
Right.
much time to each one, right?
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
I see a lot of value in that. I do want to ask you about the sales academy.
Yeah.
So that sales is near and dear to my heart, and
Yeah.
I've spent a lot of time with owners and particularly their sales teams over the years. But for those who attend, what kind of results are you seeing 6 to 12 months after?
Hmm. It's a wide range. You probably saw the same thing when you were doing what you were doing, right? Um, from zero, right? They just don't make it. It was a
Hmm.
bad hire to, let's say, in some cases over 1 million in their first 12 months.
Fantastic.
And um, in a lot of cases, I would say like 4 to 600,000 in mitigation in their first 6 months. And these are they're smaller mitigation businesses, so it's a substantial increase for them, right?
Right.
To know, maybe go from 1 million to 1.5 million because they added a sales rep. Um, so um, yeah, I had one guy early on who he was the first guy in my group that broke 1 million in his first 12 months. He did 1.2. And it was just a combination of agents and plumbers and
Hmm.
um, and a couple of property managers
Sure.
and he got a couple of fires in his first year. And
Sure. Good.
it can add up quickly.
It can. Or do you see that? And I would assume this would be the case. But do you see that most of them are still focused more on the residential than they are the commercial?
I do.
Okay.
I do. But I am I've been encouraging, and some owners are more comfortable than others with taking on commercial work, or even some are very concerned about getting something that they can't handle, which
Right.
completely justifiable in that thought. So they're reluctant to let their sales reps call a commercial. I've got some others who are not, are of the mindset, you know what, bring it on. We'll figure it out. That's the kind of problem I want to have. And and a lot of times the the commercial jobs, like that fear of it's going to be too big for us is really doesn't come up very often. A lot of times
Hmm.
the people calling on property management, large condo buildings, for example. Well, it's like 150 units are unlikely. Could happen, right? They could have a really bad fire and the entire building could be affected. What's much more common is five water jobs because
Exactly.
one unit had water damage and it affected four others.
Yeah. Gravity kicks in.
Yeah, that's manageable. So
Right.
I try to have the same thing with uh, clients who are they're only doing, say, water.
Mm.
When I start working with them, some of the franchises only support water.
Wow.
And so uh, I do my very best to convince them to
Expand.
to expand and
Right.
just
Yeah.
start talking about fire. So I on Tuesday I got a call from one of my clients and I just started working with him about 3 months ago. And on our first call, I said, tell me about what you're thinking about offering. Just water, probably for the first year or so. And then I think in year two, we'll add mold. And then probably,
Hmm.
maybe in year three, we'll start adding fire. I started shaking my head, like, what? I said, no, just talk, just offer it all right now.
Correct.
I don't know about that. So anyway, they got their first fire on Tuesday, and they Matterported it, sent it to me, and
Wow.
little kitchen fire, little protein fire, smoked up the
That's
entire
good.
house, about
Yeah.
2,300 square foot house. Perfect, what I would call an easy first water job.
Great first job.
Great first
Yeah.
job.
Of
I remember it
course.
was I think I was about a year and a half in before I saw what I would consider my first real fire job. Like we got puffbacks in the beginning, we got some kitchen
Mhm.
fires, and so one night on a Sunday night, I I go and meet the homeowner at the door. He takes me upstairs, and I remember I'll never forget this. I'm walking up the stairwell, and I'm thinking to myself, how strange that some, I'm embarrassed to tell you this, guy. How strange that somebody would paint their walls black.
Right.
And then I got upstairs and I was looking around a little bit more. I'm like, oh,
That's not paint.
this is what a real fire looks like.
Exactly.
So I'm glad they came to me, in progressive degrees of
Right.
difficulty, right? Because that's a
Well,
much different job than a little furnace puff back,
oh,
right?
sure,
Yeah.
sure. Well, how about the smoke webs? The first time you see
Oh,
those, you're like, wow,
that
man, we
was
haven't, like, when's all
the
this?
first time. It's like I remember seeing that in a class about a year and a half ago. But yeah. Yeah, I remember, yeah, when I first saw that, I thought, boy, these people aren't very neat and clean. Like they've got
Correct.
cobwebs all over the place. So anyway, yeah, it's so when I think back, I think, you know what, if I can do that, if
Right.
I could get through that job successfully, then so
Yeah.
can everybody else.
Exactly. And you walk through it and you understand it, you've seen it. So that gives you a wonderful perspective in helping
Yeah.
your clients as well. Let's shift a little bit. Talk about financial blind spots. So
Mm.
one of the things you said early on was your primary goals is to making sure the owners are not in the dark about their finances.
Right.
So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Few years ago, I wrote this article for Michelle Blevins of CNR Magazine. It's called
Mhm.
the ABCs of P&Ls. So many of my clients, when I first started working with them, didn't understand their P&Ls. They weren't set up properly, and some of them were franchises, some of them were independents. The chart of accounts wasn't set up in a way that it was usable. And I don't want to we could go, I could
Oh,
talk for a couple of hours on this topic and don't want to do
sure.
that to you or anybody else. But the financial blind spots it always starts with, is the bookkeeping really disciplined? right? Or how are you invoicing? Is there a discipline around the way you're invoicing? And does that discipline allow for accurate P&Ls? For example, one of the things that I do with my clients is whether they're in a group or one-on-one is monthly P&L feedback. So they send me their cash and accrual P&Ls and I put them on my screen, hit the record button on my screencast recorder, and give them feedback. Tell them what I see. This looks good. This looks bad. This looks so wacky. It's got to be wrong. And so I teach them how to understand their P&Ls and then to be able to use them to make decisions. And more importantly than that, just understand what's going well in the business and what isn't so we can pay attention to those things that aren't going well and fix them. Uh, so so many people, when I first meet them, will tell me, uh, yeah, I look at my P&Ls once a quarter when my accountant sends them to me. You can't run a P&L yourself? No, I have to wait for my accountant.
Hmm.
And in some cases, Scott,
Yep.
these are large seven-figure businesses,
Oh,
right?
sure.
Like a lot of times people, like friends that I talk to in other industries, they can't imagine that and this is I've talked to accountants who don't look at their own P&Ls. Like,
Mm,
so it's not
right.
uncommon, right?
Right.
Um, so sometimes they're relying on some outside service and they're not reviewing them on a regular basis themselves. Sometimes they review them, but because of the poor information in them, and I'll give you an example in a minute, they they become kind of numb to them. They say, you know what, these aren't accurate. So why am
Mm,
I even bother looking at them? Here's an example, a real common example. You sign a reconstruction job and you ask for a deposit and you get a deposit. And let's say it's a $150,000 job and you request a $50,000 deposit.
right.
And your bookkeeper creates an invoice for that. And so it's April. And now it's April 24th. And May, once the month is closed, we look at the April P&L and we say, whoa, look at this. This is a really profitable month. This is great.
Hmm.
And then the owner scratches his head and says, oh, you know what? Maybe it's not all that profitable because $50,000 of that net profit is a deposit and we haven't done any of the work yet. So that's not really profit, right? And and then the next month, the owner looks at the P&Ls and all their bills came in and they produced a big part of that job and a bunch of bills from subcontractors came in, but they haven't had anything else to invoice. So now they look at the P&L and L and they say, ah, geez, we were really unprofitable. What a terrible month.
Mm,
And then the owner says, well, no, not really, because last month we got a bunch of money for this job.
hmm.
And this month we're paying for it. So
Right.
we're really not unprofitable, but it just looks like it on the P&Ls. And then you find that I'm just talking about one job, right? Now try
Oh,
to do
yes.
that with your whole business.
Mm,
Now you say, why am I bothering to look at my P&Ls? And the one thing that I've noticed over the years, so I've been working with restoration business owners since '09 as a consultant.
right.
When they get a handle on when they let me help them get their financials in order and they can truly use them and look at them and know that they're telling the truth about the business, just that act of paying attention makes them more profitable.
Sure.
Yeah.
Focus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So um, this industry is too hard to be unprofitable or to be breaking even at, I mean, it's not uncommon for me to see five, six, $7 million businesses breaking even, barely breaking even.
Sure.
Sometimes they're mitigation only, right? There's just no reason for that.
Well, and I'm sure you've seen the examples of these as well. They could be running really a profitable operation, doing all the things right, but if their debt load is
Mm,
heavy. It's killing everything, right?
percent. Yeah, because you don't see that on the P&L,
No,
right?
it's on the balance sheet.
On the balance sheet. So, right, like you could have a $2 million revenue business with no debt, and then one with a lot of debt, and the owner's personal financial situation is very, very different.
Yeah,
So we can't just look at the P&L.
right. It's looking at both. So this is
Yeah.
a good segue into something that I think is very valuable, and that's as they look at really the value of their business,
Mm.
as they think about, because as you mentioned,
Oh yeah.
that scenario of, in my experience, these owners are ready to sell out of just they're exasperated, right?
Mm.
They're either
Yeah.
frustrated it being in the restoration industry, or they're not having a great year and they're like, that's it, I'm going to sell, which we
Yeah.
know is the worst time.
100%.
Now there's no value. So let's talk about the
Yeah.
long game. Part
Yeah.
of what you do
Mhm.
is build towards a business, help these owners build towards a business that's has value. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a there's a list that I go through with clients, so one of the most important things that we've been talking a lot about is the financials, right? Really good, solid, explainable, accurate financials. If you don't have that, you're going to scare away a prospective buyer. Like I've got multiple stories of, I'm in touch with brokers on a regular basis of deals that fall apart really early on in due diligence because the financials are a mess
Mm,
and it scares buyers away. Uh, so financials, owner as uninvolved in daily operations as possible, right?
great.
If I'm buying your business, I don't want to be a production manager. Right. I don't want to be on a truck going out to jobs. I don't think in most cases, most of my clients who
No,
are selling, they've got a business that is, it's a seven-figure exit, and the buyer is not wanting to buy a job. They
no,
want
they want to buy a business.
to buy a business. So, uh, diversity in where you're getting work, right? It's it's I can't imagine a due diligence process that wouldn't look at a mix of revenue, where it's coming from, right? So the less diverse you are, the less, the more risk there is to the buyer. And so I want to work with my clients to get it as diverse as possible.
Excellent.
The other thing is, a strong management team, like
Infrastructure.
infrastructure, 100%. So, as much redundancy as possible, right? So if 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 I'm looking at your business and you have no backup, I know that I'm going to be the backup, right? So if you have one reconstruction manager, what happens when that person decides to leave or you have to fire them,
Mhm.
right? Is the owner going to have to step into that role? So I'm
Correct.
also looking to encourage my clients to build backup plan for everything that doesn't involve themselves.
Okay.
Um,
Good.
those are, and then documented process, right?
Mhm.
There should be the way you do business. Um, I'm a big proponent of performance-based compensation plans.
Yes.
I want some performance-based comp for every role in the business. I want them to be rewarded to drive what's important to owners. So that now, is that critical for a sale? No. I think the other things that I talked about are, I
Oh,
think,
yes.
I think performance-based comp plans help make the business more profitable though, because if the team is aligned with the owner, and of course this is not at the expense of the customer experience, which is also really important, right?
Very important.
Uh, but I just find businesses that have performance-based comp element tend to be more profitable.
Mhm. No, I totally understand that. Ideally, and we'll wrap with this question,
Yeah.
Scott. Ideally, if somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, I'm thinking about selling," what is that time frame that you really would recommend to
Hmm.
work with them to prepare that?
Depends what their business looks like today, right? Uh, Typically what I see is from the time you list your business to the time you're at the closing is 6 to 9 months. A lot of times it's close to a year though.
Sure.
Um, but that's what I see. So, um, but to get a business ready for sale, that's so
Right.
tough to
Really
answer,
depends
Scott.
on
Like,
what you're dealing with.
yeah, I've worked with clients for as little as a year.
Right.
Uh, to help them kind of just tidy things up. They were already in pretty good shape, but working together just made their business a little bit more attractive and more valuable. And I've worked with, I have a quick funny one where I was working with a client for about a little over 2 years, and one day, most of my clients I talk with every 2 weeks. So we get on our call and he says, "Hey, I want to let you know that this month is going to be our last month working together."
Hmm.
I said, "Oh, I'm surprised. What,
What
I,
happened?
yeah, what happened? What did I do?" He said, "No, no, no, it's not you." He said, "I'm going to retire." I said, "Okay. And the business?" He said, "Yeah, I'm just going to close it."
Oh my.
And I said, "Okay, well, we have to talk about this. This just doesn't make any sense." And he said, "Well," and I had talked to him over, the course of our time working together about selling, and no real interest in selling. And he was older. He was about 10 years older than me. I'm
Okay.
57 right now. And this was a couple of years ago. And so he said, no, he said, my wife retired. Um, she's got a lot of savings. I don't think the business is really sellable. And in the 2 years or so that we were working together, we did a lot of work on getting him out of the daily operations, a lot of work on getting his financials squeaky clean and
Right.
explainable. And I don't want to use his name. Uh, so I said, hey, bud, like
Yeah.
this is a sellable business. I said,
Yeah.
do me a favor, give this 6 months.
Hmm.
I'm going to introduce you to somebody. Let's get it
Yeah.
listed.
Yeah.
And so fast forward, sells the business. It took about 4 months. And
Okay.
so he called me after the settlement. He said, "Hey, thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. I was ready to just walk away from it. I didn't think I had anything of value to sell." And
Wow.
I said, "Well, what are you going to do? You told me you didn't need the money. What are you going to do?" He says, "Oh, he said, I already did it. I bought a bigger boat." Uh,
He should name that boat Scott because you
right.
helped, yeah, you helped
I
him
haven't
make a
talked
lot
to
of
him in a
money.
while. I'll have to mention that. Yeah.
That's a great example. Scott, this has been absolutely a valuable conversation. I've enjoyed it. I think we could have
Yep.
spent hours probably
Oh,
on different
yeah.
sections of this, and maybe we'll just need to revisit it.
Yeah. If you ever want to do a
But
follow up on a particular topic, just let me know.
absolutely. Wajir, would you like to close?
And that's a wrap on this episode of Restoration Insider. If you like what Scott has said, you can find him at thegrowthleague.com. That's thegrowthleague.com. And if you like this episode, please like it and share it. This episode has been brought to you by Comma Staff, the best remote staffing solution for restoration companies. Thank you so much and stay tuned for more episodes.
Thank
Scott,
you.
amazing, 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 guys.
Thanks,
Thank
sure.
you.
Scott.